Welcome children. We discuss about Indo-China relationships in this video. We have a long-lasting friendship which accounts for a period around 12,000 years ago. From there it starts. When the entire world was in darkness, you had a few civilizations here in the southern part of Asia which were very prominent. One was the Mesopotamian civilization in the plains of Euphrates and Tigris rivers, Chinese civilization on the plains of Huanghe River in China, Indus Valley civilization on the banks of the Indus River in the Indian subcontinent, Egyptian civilization, it is on the plains of the area which you call as the banks of the Nile River, the longest river in the world, that is in Africa, Roman civilization, Greek civilization. These were all prominent civilizations there. When the Indus Valley civilization was at its peak in India and man had started moving from the Neolithic age to the modern historical period, stage by stage. In the Indus Valley civilization, man discovered that what we speak can be written too. So he discovered script. With writing getting invented, history took a new shape. Now Indus Valley civilization is where the Indus River is flowing now. That's in India. Now part of it, you have to say, it's in Pakistan. Major portion has gone to Pakistan. Euphrates and Tigris rivers had made the portions of Iraq and Iran very fertile, the present Iraq and Iran. There is the area where Persia is there now. We call it as Persia. That is the Mesopotamian civilization. Indus Valley and Mesopotamian civilizations, they are called as the early civilizations from the viewpoint of our studies now. At that period, man used to be a migrant. He used to move from place to place. For the first time he has started settling down where there is a river, where he can build a house and stay. It came up gradually. At that period itself, people from India used to go to China, and from China people used to come here. Not in large numbers. Those who were adventurous, those who were interested in probing things further, finding out new lands, trying to know how do they live. The Silk Road was invented. The Silk Road between Europe and China, between China and India, silk was a prominent industry then, and people who were interested in silk clothes, they were mainly from India and China. So these two countries had a good relationship, exchanging ideas, knowing what do they do in the other country. So along the way through the Himalayas, people from here used to move there, from there they used to come here. And silk industry was prosperous stage by stage. So the relations between India and China date back to the period of Mesopotamian and Indus civilizations. Let's read it. The relations between India and China goes back to the point of Mesopotamian and Indus civilizations. So as the civilizations progressed, even the relations between India and Midwest, India and China, they too saw lot of progress. To Buddhism. Buddhism originated in India, but it sent deep roots into the civilization in China. Buddhism originated with Lord Buddha, Bhagavan Buddha. He was known as Siddhartha earlier. He fled away from his palace, went to the forest, and there he did penance, and ultimately he arrives at a conclusion that turns to be a message to the entire world, that desire is the sole cause for all our problems. Man can be free, man can be happy, man can lead a meaningful life provided he gives up desire. Animals don't accrue wealth for tomorrow, but man accrues wealth. He always thinks about tomorrow. Animals don't care about it. They always live in the present. After Bhagavan Buddha, King Ashoka became the emperor of India, and he had a great desire to build up a huge empire and rule. He was very strong. He was going strong. He kills his own brothers. He becomes an emperor. He declares war on other countries one by one. Everywhere he turns victorious. Ultimately, he declares a war on Kalinga, a kingdom which was getting administered very well. It is a big war with huge losses ultimately. No doubt Kalinga lost, but the people of Kalinga, the soldiers of Kalinga, fought bravely. They did not easily get admitted to defeat. They fought, and lakhs of soldiers died. There was bloodshed. Thousands of elephants died. Mr. Ashoka had a huge force of elephants. It said he had about 3,000 elephants in his army. There was a massacre of human beings and animals in that war. And Kalinga lost the war. Seeing the huge bloodshed in the Kalinga war, Ashoka decided to give up all desires, give up the throne, and become a saint. On the lines of what Buddha had told, Ashoka gives up all desires. He gives up his crown, his robes, royal robes, the jewelry, even the sandals he was wearing, and he wears the saffron cloth, and he becomes a disciple of Buddha. From there onwards, he gives the message of a desire-free world. Give up desires, you will be happy. His own relatives, his brothers and sisters, his nephews, uncles, everyone, he deputes them to different countries to spread Buddhism. He puts up edicts. Edicts are big stones on which carvings are done. The message of Buddhism is engraved and put up in public places for people to read and follow. At that time, Buddha's message spread to China too. And the Chinese took lot of interest in getting it spread all over their land, and Buddhism became very prominent in China. Even today, a big section of Chinese are Buddhists. Tibet is full of monks, Buddhist monks. That's how India had an important role to play, keeping in view how China developed. So Buddhism originated in India. Bhagavan Buddha, he founded it. He did not initiate actually, he only spread the message. His followers got it spread. Buddha did not have any intention like that. He was clean, pure, he did not want people to join or anything. He just came out with philosophy and he just told these things to his disciples. From the disciples it went to all nations. Now, many of the Indian rulers had cordial trade relationships with Chinese rulers. So we have a long history of relationship. These two countries have a long history of good relationship. The silk trade between China and India is discussed in Kautilya's Arthashastra. Kautilya is Chanakya. That's his another name. Chanakya was the guru of Chandragupta Maurya and he was the chief minister of Chandragupta Maurya too. Kautilya was a great brain, a great philosopher, a political philosopher. And Kautilya's Arthashastra, the treatise on economy, is famous even today. It is being studied not only in Indian universities, even abroad. What Kautilya said then, in 19 volumes of his Arthashastra, as to how a kingdom has to be governed, how an army has to be built, what kind of spies a king needs, administration, the revenue system, everything he has detailed out in his Arthashastra. Treatise on economy, I can say. It has come out in 19 volumes. He had a profound knowledge and he was a great thinker. In his Arthashastra, he has made a mention of the silk trade between India and China. Mauryan Empire was a great empire. In our history, as you come across, Mauryans were great rulers, especially Chandragupta Maurya. At that period, around 2000 years ago, they gave the concept of one India. India not only got limited to what we have now, it had spread up to Iraq, Iran, here up to Bangkok, Thailand, Sri Lanka. It was a part, it was an integrated, vast Indian territory that was being ruled by Chandragupta Maurya then, with Kautilya as his chief minister. Chandragupta Maurya was actually maid's son, royal maid's son. When he was young, he was very cute, active, brainy, and Chanakya did not like the Navanandas who were ruling from Delhi then. And he decides that Navanandas should be made to give up, they should be finished, and this maid's son, he got him developed very well to become a king, the next king. He was able to get power transferred to him. Okay, that's all a big story, you can follow it. After the emergence of India and China as two sovereign republics, India became a sovereign republic after 1947. China too became a sovereign republic. Their mutual relationships were guided by Panchashila principles. India and China wanted to be very close. Jawaharlal Nehru had been our Prime Minister. He invites Chow En-lai, the Prime Minister of China, to Delhi. Both of them, they declare a set of rules, a set of conduct, 5 conducts. Panchashila, Pancha means 5, Shila means conduct. 5 conducts for good relationships between nations. One of them was, an important one, was peace. Every country, each and every country should have respect for the other country. You should not invade into others' territory. You should have peaceful relations and cooperation should be the motto. What we ascribe now. Even our Prime Minister says in speeches, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. This entire world is one family. We should be united. There should not be any room for military conflicts. Third World War should not be in our sight at all. World wars are over. Now we need a peaceful globe for all the people to live happily. Vasudhaiva means world. Vasudhaiva, let the world live like a family. Kutumbakam, let it be one kutumba. This is what our Vedas and Upanishads tell us. So these two sovereign countries were guided by the Panchashila principles of Jawaharlal Nehru. But this conduct did not last long. China, knowing that we did not have enough military strength, attacked us in 1962. China attacked us in 1962. A war broke between India and China in 1962. Little earlier, they had taken away Tibet. Tibet was an independent country. The lamas, the Buddhist monks, they were in control of Tibet. Tibet was to the north of India, to the north of the Himalayas. That was swallowed by China. Now they had their eye on India, so a war broke out. Fortunately, Russia supported us. America gave us the needed help. Too, and China did not advance further. The war came to a close. They attacked us in Ladakh. They attacked us in Arunachal Pradesh then. So the relations between the two countries turned sour. With this particular expansionist policy of China, India and China, the relationship between these two countries turned into something which was fishy later on. We don't have the needed trust in China because Chinese did not hold the Panchashila high. They did not have the respect for that because their theory was one of expansionism. They wanted to build up a vast country and rule it. We have democracy in India. China has communism there. They don't have democracy. The policies there are very rude. People do not have the respect which they get in India. A war broke between India and China in 1962 due to the explosion of Tibetan crisis. When China attacked Tibet, we were vociferous in telling that China has not done the right thing. Jawaharlal Nehru openly told the world, see, China has broke the Panchashila. China is exhibiting expansionism. They have taken over Tibet and it is not in good spirits. It has to be condemned. And China got angry on India. Thereafter, the 1962 war happened. Thereafter, we have a love-hate relationship with China. I told you in the beginning, love-hate. We love China for certain things because we have a long past. We hate China because they are not upright now in their thinking. Their viewpoints are different. Look at India. India has not invaded any country in its last 4,000 to 5,000 years history. You don't find a single expansionist attitude exhibited by India. No king of India has invaded another country. There is no country in the world which has not invaded other countries. India is an exception. That's how we have the trust of the entire world. Even a superpower like America knows India will not break its own rule. Still, PM Modi maintained good relations with Xi Jinping. Last 50 years or so, the relations were bad. China was supporting Pakistan throughout. Pakistan had been inimical towards India. All these are known facts. In spite of it, Modi, who came to power in 2014, he went ahead trying to build up good relationships with China. China may change its thinking, he thought. So we went ahead with the formation of BRICS in 2015. BRICS is a federation of 5 nations of the world. B stands for Brazil. R stands for a superpower, Russia. I, it is India. C, it is China, Communist China. And yes, it is South Africa. These 5 nations, all strong powers, they were brought together, and Modi placed a charter of plans to build up this association for the good of the world. A separate BRICS bank we wanted to put up. Its headquarters will be in Hong Kong, and lot of other plans. These 5 countries should help each other, cooperate with each other to build up the global society. We should be able to put up a formidable contribution into the development of the entire world and mankind. It has further strengthened our bondage. Everyone felt things are different now. The bondage between India and China would definitely improve. Today, India and China are 2 leading economies of the world. There is no doubt about it. Yet, some problems pinch us. Everything is not normal. Certain problems, they disturb the relation between India and China. What are they? See, China's claim over Arunachal Pradesh. China is telling that Arunachal Pradesh should go to them. Arunachal Pradesh is one of the 28 states of India. But still China says, no, it doesn't belong to you. People in Arunachal Pradesh have the same face cut of the Chinese people, one of the reasons they give. So, they have got originated from the Chinese root. Arunachal Pradesh should go to China. It's sitting pretty on the Himalayas, Himalayan heights. If we give Arunachal Pradesh to China, where is the question of sovereignty then? How can it be given? Arunachal Pradesh is a part of India. China does this not only to India, it has asked about 20 countries in the world to part away with their parts. It says those parts belong to China. 200 years ago, 300 years ago, 1000 years ago, the Vladivostok port, it's a chief port of Russia. China says that Vladivostok port, which is on the banks of or on the side of the Pacific Ocean, very close to Japan, was a Chinese territory 1000 years ago. So Russia should give it away now. How is it possible? Russia has just laughed at that proposal. That will never happen. China has asked certain islands from Japan. China has told Malaysia to part away with a few islands. It is not in good terms with India. With Nepal, it has certain cunning plans to take away part of Nepal. Tibet, it has already swallowed. Arunachal Pradesh, it wants. And all the countries, including Thailand, Vietnam, with each and everyone, China has very bad relationships now. Even Manchuria, a part of Manchuria, China is asking, that belongs to me. But in the modern world, these are not possible. These cannot happen. No country will be willing to part away with the part. What has happened in history has happened. Now it is over. All the countries should learn to live with peace learn with peace. They should live learning what peace is. They should maintain it. So, question of Arunachal Pradesh being given away to China because it's claiming it, that question is not there. The Indian political heads have made it very clear to China, and it won't happen. India is strengthening its military position too, because we have our own doubts. Any day China may once again attack India. Mao is terrorism in the form of Naxalism in India. China wants communism to spread all over the globe. They don't want democracy anywhere. China is against democracy. There is no voting right to people in China. There they have the communist or the Marxist Politburo. Just as we have parliament, their top organization. The Politburo sits and decides what has to be done to the country. And Xi Jinping has become the president of China forever now, till his death. Till his last breath, he will be the head. He has got the law passed there in the Politburo. Politburo has declared Xi Jinping will be the head of China for the rest of his tenure. This is where it stands now. They are not happy with the democracy here. Russia became a communist country. China became a communist country. They wanted even India to become a communist country. With that, much of Asia will be communist. Tackling America will be easy later on, or all the European countries getting converted into the communist policy would be easy. That was not possible. The 1962 plan failed actually. China was not able to progress further. Now, the communist policy of China, you call it as Maoism, because Mao Zedong, his full name, he brought communism into China. With an army of 1 lakh, Mao moves from village to village. Whoever was against the Chinese communism, they were beheaded. There is a big revolution in China then to bring about absolute communism in China and put them at the helm of affairs. With that, Mao became the president of China. Same Maoism, we call it as Naxalism in India. Naxalbari movement, Naxalism. What do? Youngsters in their teenagers, they are mind-washed, brainwashed, and they are told to come and join this Naxalbari movement. The movement is there in Karnataka to some extent in the Western Ghats. It is there in Andhra, Telangana, Orissa, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Bihar and West Bengal. In Bihar and West Bengal, the movement has gained lot of force. But the Indian Army and the police are doing their best in cornering them, getting them arrested, and an open invitation is there for them to surrender even. So, children who go to schools, when they are given rifles in their hands, they will be very happy. Parents asking them to read the whole day, study for the exams, all these difficulties are not there. Go and join Naxalbari, rifles are given, you have military training, you will have nice living there in the forest, and whenever required you start attacking rich people, killing them. So it's a story of bloodshed. Thousands of rich people, bureaucrats, politicians have become victims of the Naxalbari movement. It's not of today or yesterday. It is there right from the period we had our first 5-year elections, first general elections. From there it's there. China is supplying them with ideas, policies, armaments, weapons, everything is getting supplied to them. China wants by hook or crook communism to get established here. So the efforts are on. At least when they attack India, there will be a group of people to welcome them. Clap and welcome. This is a story of Maoism in India. What do we call it here? As Naxalism. It is Naxalism here. They are called as Naxals. Most of their attacks are all hit and run. A bus is moving from one place to the other. They just come and hit and kill all the people there and create a kind of fervor, fear in the minds of people, get them scared. Oh, Maos are coming, Naxals are coming, what next, what next? So this disturbing atmosphere they want to create. Now this Maoism, actually it's a bone of contention, a bone of worry between India and China. India is not happy with China for the reason they support Naxalism in India. Then foreign trade, nuclear threat. China is a nuclear country. We too have atomic bombs. But the world can be sure that India will not use them. We will not be the first to use under any circumstance. Because we are peace-loving. We have nuclear bombs only to see that these people who want to scare us cannot do that. It's a matter of keeping them under a fear of a retaliation by Indians. In case they attack India, India is not a country which would keep quiet. In case they try to use atomic bomb, we may retaliate. So to create that fear, India has turned to be nuclear. Otherwise, whatever our government says will not have any strength. It will be a matter for being laughed at by Pakistan and China. So that's nuclear threat. India is a nuclear country. Pakistan is a nuclear country. China is also a nuclear country. This maintains some sort of balance too. Then foreign trade challenges. Here I want to throw light on one aspect. China is a very huge market in the world for the simple reason their products are very, very cheap. Chinese products are very cheap because the production cost in China is very low. People are made to work, get all the products made under the butt of the gun. That will be paid only a small honorarium or some amount, or even food sometimes, just food to survive. They are made to work day and night. Automatically the Chinese items work out to be very cheap. And they are very... How can things be made very cheap? The Lakshmi and Ganesha, what we worship in India, they come to the market in the festival season. Just check from where do they come. They come from China. China makes those products for being sold in India. And these items, they don't come in small numbers. They come in enormous numbers. In lakhs and crores of pieces getting made in China and being sent here. Pyrotechnics, all the explosives you prepare for recreation during Diwali, they are made in China. They are cheap. No doubt in Shivakashi too we produce, but Chinese goods are much cheaper. That's how in producing thousands of different items, right from medicines to the pyrotechnic items of Diwali. Everything gets manufactured there, and when it comes to the market, Chinese goods will have the lowest price. So be it America, be it Europe or India, where people care for cheap rated goods, they turn towards the items that come from China. This may not happen to that extent in Europe and America. There they don't care about what they spend. They want quality. But when it comes to a poor country like India, people want to purchase more for a less cost. So here they find lot of meaning. The market gets flooded with their goods. Go to any shop, there you see Chinese goods. They dump them here. They don't come against order. They are dumped. Ships get loaded with them. They come here, and at the ports you purchase. Our shopkeepers, our contractors purchase, and it goes into each and every town and village. Yeah, that's the foreign trade challenges. We have challenges too, but we get cheap goods. See, India purchases about 65 billion rupees worth Chinese goods. We export about 15 billion worth Indian goods to China. What's the difference? From 15 billion to 65 billion. We lose 50 billion every year. That's why now the government is speaking of producing everything in India instead of going for these cheap goods from China. If you produce in large number, large quantity, automatically the rate should fall. And government is banning now Chinese apps and even Chinese goods coming to India. Can't be totally banned because foreign trade agreements are there. People have to join hands with the government in seeing that these Chinese goods are not given importance in our market. Chinese military advancements in border areas. Doklam, it happened last year near Sikkim. Doklam, in the Himalayan heights, they tried to intrude into the Indian territory. Now, about a month ago, you had the Galwan Valley intrusion. Actually, Galwan Valley area, that's Aksai Chin area, a little outside that. Aksai Chin area is taken away by the Chinese in the 1962 intrusion. Just outside that in the Indian territory you have the Galwan Valley. That Galwan Valley they wanted to take away because Aksai Chin is an area which can't be used for anything. It's all covered by ice. This Galwan Valley, if it is taken over by China, they can push further into Kashmir, from there into the POK, Pakistan occupied Kashmir, from there Gilgit, and they can have the highway to Karachi. A clean and neat, well-laid highway from China to Karachi that will open up the gates to Indian Ocean. That's what they were hoping, but it did not happen. India has pushed them back once again because international community supported India. Only about 4 or 5 countries supported China. All the rest 190 countries they supported India. So China had to accept defeat. It had to retract from whatever forward areas it had won. But the fear continues. It's there. They may attack again. At any time they may attack India. We have to be prepared. If we are not prepared, if we don't have the proper military strength, there is every possibility we may lose part of our northern territory. And last one, even our border with China is not properly marked. Usually between every 2 countries there will be a properly marked border. That is not there because it was all hilly area covered by ice. Neither India nor China felt it should be properly marked. So tentatively we have a marking on paper in the atlas. You can't fix poles there and have barbed wire because it's all icy. So we did not care much. We don't have line of control. Now what we have is only line of actual control. Whatever areas are in Chinese hands, they are in Chinese hands. Whatever areas are in Indian hands, we have them, and we have a line drawn between the two. We guard. We don't want them to advance further. We don't intrude into their territory thinking that some decision would be taken in the coming years. Even our border with China is not properly marked. we have only a line of actual control. So we don't mark it as LOC, we mark it as LAC. Now Aksai Chin, actually it is in Chinese hands. It belongs to India. Arunachal Pradesh is with us, but China is telling it is mine. Clear it out. Go back. Clear it out. So it's a very disturbing situation all along that line. Even Tibetan monks are in India. Tibetan monks, they say Tibet belongs to us. Vacate it. It's not your territory. But where will China go back? And China hardly respects even international decisions. So this is where we stand now. Pakistan, controlling Pakistan is not such a big issue for India. It's a nuisance. Pakistan is a nuisance in a way. But China is not like that. China is a superpower. In case a war breaks out between India and China, it will be another big war and many other countries may join. Now with regard to Galvan Valley, we had USA, we had Russia. Russia came to our support. Japan, Australia, Hong Kong, Burma, see, lots of European countries, all European countries, they said, no, we will be giving the needed support to India and we will see that India has an upper hand. They all came out with open presentation of their support to India. But let's hope peace prevails, because wars do not do any good. They put us back on the timeline because we lose people, we lose weapons, we lose our economic strength, and the country will fall back by 5 years, 10 years or 20 years once there is a war. So it is not in the interest of neither China nor India. There has to be peace. Let's pray for that, and here our discussion about Indo-China relationships gets over. Thank you.